Hey car nerds, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be talking about EV route planning. We are taking a road trip to Flagstaff, and it is the perfect time to talk about how to plan a route for an EV. When I plugged in the information here, it told us we were going to need a charge stop on the way. And so we are going to stop in Sedona, and then we'll stop again in Flagstaff so we have enough charge when we reach our final destination. Now, why are we going to stop twice? We're going to talk about it. We're going to go over what goes into planning a road trip for an EV. If you've never planned one before, it's fairly simple, and there's a few apps that you can use, like a Better Route Planner or Plugshare. They're both pretty good about planning routes, but your built-in navigation will also plan a route for you. So there's several options out there. There's also other websites and applications, but we'll talk about some of that, and we'll talk about what goes into planning a route for an EV. All right, let's get into it. When it comes to traveling on the road in the US, we have come to assume that there's going to be a gas station off of pretty much any exit that we come to along the highway. And we know that, in some areas that we're more familiar with, there might be stretches of road where it might be 2 or 3 exits without a gas station. In 80 years, we have built up around 160,000 gas stations across this country. Now, in the last 12 years of people driving EVs, more long distance, that's basically since the Tesla Model S has been out. We have built almost 75,000 electronic vehicle charging stations. So in the last 12 years, we're almost halfway to the amount of gas stations we have in the US. Now, having said that, there is not an EV charging station off of every highway exit yet. So when you go to take a road trip, it can be beneficial to do a little bit of road trip planning. You just need to take a few minutes to take a look at a map and see, where is it going to have me charge? What is it going to have me do? Well, in this video, we're going to talk about that, because when we planned this trip to Flagstaff, it told us that we would need to charge twice. It originally wanted us to charge in Anthem, which is about an hour and a half away from the house, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you're driving down the freeway. We would still have most of our charge at that point. So what we needed to do was take a look at the map and see where is the best place to charge. The other thing to consider is, when you're going to stop, what is your charge speed going to be? EVs have a charge curve, which, as the battery fills, it slows down. So when it's closer to empty, the battery will charge a lot faster at a public fast charging station. So what does that look like? Well, it looks like this. The website EVKX is a great resource when you're researching EVs and you're curious on how fast they charge. So as you can see in the screenshot, as you get closer to full, that charging speed drops pretty low, which means that when you're road trip planning, you would really want to charge when you're closer, to a lower state of charge, closer to zero. You don't want to stop at zero, but you would want to stop, somewhere around like 15-20%, That way you have a buffer in case you need to change plans, go a different direction, or even if the station that you're looking to go to is super busy or is out of service for some reason. That way you've got that buffer to go somewhere else. The other piece of route planning is, if you plug your destination into the nav in your car, the car will automatically precondition your battery for fast charging. However, I like to use a website such as a Better Route Planner, because you can look at all of the other charging in the areas. Sometimes you also get different results than what you get in your car. This way you can see the options that are out there. Now, going back to that conversation earlier about the optimal charge curve for each vehicle, you'll see that this planning had some mental quirks for me because it didn't quite make sense. So in this screenshot here, I'm going to show you. This is Better Route Planner. You can plug in your car and your destination, and you can hit plan, and it's going to show you what it believes is the optimal route. Now, the thing with a Better Route Planner is that it is looking for charge stations that are right along your route. So as you can see here, it wants us to stop and charge not too far from home. Well, to me, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense because I know there are charge stations that are closer to Flagstaff, such as one in Sedona. Now, you can replace charge stations in a Better Route Planner, but it is looking to have you replace the charge station around where that other one is. So in this case, I go to another website, such as Plugshare. Plugshare is another great website that can show you charging options all across the country and the world. So I looked at this, and it's like, oh, well, look, here's one right up here in Sedona, not too far off of the freeway. That's perfect. That is where I would like to stop and charge. So, that's what I'm going to plug into a Better Route Planner. Again, this is, a few minutes off of the freeway, but we're also further along in our trip. So this will get us a lot closer to Flagstaff when we stop the charge. So this will put us more within that optimal charge curve of the vehicle. Now I can go back to a Better Route Planner, and I can find that Rivian charge station just inside Sedona, and then I can add that to the route plan. And then once this is added to the plan, I can replan the route. And with the route replanned, this looks so much better. This, like, mentally for me, this is so much more perfect. Now, I mean, sure, we are going, several minutes away from the highway in order to go charge, but it's not so bad. Plus, we get to go spend a few minutes in beautiful Sedona, looking at some red rock. Looking at Google Maps, right by that Rivian charger, there's a Bosa Donuts, there's some public restrooms. It's a well-planned charge area. There's also a Tesla-only charge station there. I believe on the other side of Sedona, more on like that north side or northwest side, I believe there is a Tesla station that is open to everybody. There is also an Electrify America station on the other side of Sedona. So there's a few charge options there in Sedona, but the Rivian charger network is just inside there. So it's the best place to go if you're going to go on to Flagstaff. And as we pull into this Rivian network charger here, we drive past the Tesla only charger. As you can see, I mean, this is at the far end of the parking lot from all the retail shops, but they just sort of blend right in with the parking lot. If you weren't really paying attention, you'd drive right past these and wouldn't even notice them. And that's how a lot of charging infrastructure currently is right now. Some of the brands are changing that, and they're putting up bigger signs, but for now, it kind of blends in. But I'm gonna be quiet now, and we're gonna hop out, and we're gonna get this car charged. All right, here we are at the wonderful Rivian station here in Sedona, Arizona. We're gonna get plugged in here real fast. All right, this is a little difficult one-handed. Hold on. All right, so now we're plugged in, and the charger is ramping up. We'll see how fast this gets going. The Optiq has a peak charge speed of about 150, and we're hitting it, 155. All right, We'll check in about 10 minutes when this is done and we get back on the road. All right, and we are back. So we let it charge a little bit more so we don't have to stop again when we first get to Flagstaff. So now we are at 85% state of charge. We've been here for 28 minutes. And it's $26. So we'll go ahead and we'll stop charging. All right. Come down here and unplug. There we go. Put a little cover back on. And that's it. Now we're off to Flagstaff. Now, if you have a keen eye, you probably saw that a Better Route Planner wanted us to stop and charge for about 10 minutes in Flagstaff. Well, we ended up staying and charging a little bit more because then we wouldn't need to charge once we got to Flagstaff. So in a Better Route Planner, if you go into your route, you can modify some of the settings about your route, and you can go in there and you can change your charge times. And, doing this kind of visualizes what we talked about and what we did. So when we replan the route, if we charge for about 30 minutes, we'll get the Flagstaff now at over 50%. Now, when we get there, we could still go charge and add more if we wanted to, but this gives us the flexibility to go and do what we want to do around Flagstaff. Flagstaff isn't a big city, and, it also has lower speed limits. And you have to remember, with an EV, they are more efficient at lower speeds. Kind of going back to the gas car, an EV talk from before, or from the last video. If you've got, an EV, you're going to notice a lot more range at lower speeds. They've got a single gear, so the slower you go, the less energy you're using. The faster you go, the more energy you use. The other thing is, the faster you go down a highway, you've got a lot more resistance from the wind in the air. And, kind of like when you're flying on a plane, like if you're flying into, heavy headwinds, it's going to take a lot more power and it can slow you down a little bit. Now, of course, it's not going to slow down an EV, but it can use more energy, to get where you want to go. So, just kind of, putting that into perspective a little bit. So, going in and charging, that little bit extra there, or I guess, the 20 minutes extra in Sedona, that's going to give us plenty of energy to get around Flagstaff. And, kind of spoiler, it does. We have more than enough to get around in Flagstaff and do what we wanted to do. So that was kind of fun. And to just give a couple quick tips for EV road tripping, before you leave on a road trip, charge your battery to 100%. Most vehicles have a scheduled charge option, so you can schedule the car, to charge, be at 100% about the time you want to leave, and the car will calculate based on the power available, and it'll start charging at the appropriate time, so it reaches 100% about the time you want to leave. The other cool thing about that is that cars also have like a cabin preconditioning option you can set. That way, when you leave, like if you're leaving in the middle of summer, you can hop into a nice cool car. It'll cool itself off and everything for you, so you'll be good to go. The other piece is when you're road tripping in an EV, leave the charge setting to 100%. You might need to only charge to 60% or 70%, or maybe even 40%, to reach your destination on a road trip. But instead of going in and changing your charge settings, to only charge to that amount, just leave it set to 100%. That way, if you go off, kind of like we did, we went to Bosa, we got some donuts and coffee and tea, and we had enjoyed ourselves a little bit. But, if you do that, on a road trip, say you're driving to California, like in Indio, there's a Walmart with a EV charge station that's right next to a In-N-Out burger. Well, if you want to eat In-N-Out, I mean, go plug in at the Walmart, walk over to the In-N-Out, and if the In-N-Out is busy or whatever, because that one does get busy, you can charge up however long you're going to be there. So if you're there, 15, 20, 40 minutes, it might tell you that you only need to charge for, 15 or 20 minutes. But if, again, if you're there for 40 minutes and you charge over, that 80%, now you just have more power when you get to your next charge stop or to your destination. And that's something else to think about too. These charge stops, if you follow the optimal charge curve like the Optiq, they typically have you charge to about 60%, because then there's that kind of a dip in the charge speed. The car kind of slows down the charging for a minute. It also kind of reaches a like a thermal limit there, and so it limits charging for a few minutes in order to help cool off that battery pack. And then it speeds back up a little bit, as it, and then comes back down. And a lot of EVs have different charge curves. Some have similar, like the Equinox has the same exact charge curve, although it's the same exact battery pack and thermal management from GM. So, but other brands do have similar bumps and stuff in their charge curves. But I digress a little bit. But if you're going to stop and eat though, or maybe you're gonna go look around like a scenic area or something like that, if you charge the whole time that you're gone, and do what you want to do at the speed you want to do it, you may even be able to eliminate a charge stop. Especially if you do that like twice. Say you've got 2 charge stops that are only going to be 15 minutes. But, there's stuff that you want to do at those charge stops. Well, if you charge for like a half hour each stop, if you've got, 3 or 4 charge stops, you may eliminate one of those charge stops further down the line. There's some possibilities there. Just kind of varies by road trip, and what you're going to do. But, the more you can charge, the better to a certain extent. But, if you're just looking to optimize for time, you would want to stick to that optimal charge curve and, to the charge times that are given up by the route planning software or the navigation. Now, as we get into Flagstaff here, we're going to go off and we're going to go do our things that we want to do around Flagstaff. But, at some point we will have to head back home. Now, recording, this voiceover after, we've been home, I can tell you that, we did indeed make it back from the road trip. But, in doing the route planning to come back home, we were at the 32% for battery life. So I go back to a better route planner and I plug in at 32%. And I'm asking the better route planner, like, what is this going to look like? I'm pretty sure we're going to charge, because there's no way we're going to make it back down from Flagstaff at 32%. Now, regen braking is going to add a lot of power as we come back down from the high country and back down into the valley, but it's not going to be enough, power to get us home at 32%. So I know that we'll need to stop and charge. So when I come in here and I hit plan, it's going to show us, hey, look, you're going to stop and charge. Look, here's an Electrify America at the Walmart that's nearby. And yeah, you just need to charge up to, a little bit, 86%, and you'll be just fine. Now, looking at this, we also charged that because, we went into Walmart, walked around a little bit, and used the facilities, before we headed back home. But, this is what the return trip looked like, according to Better Route Planner. All right, we're at 76%. So we're good. Let's go ahead, let's stop. All right, we're back on the road. So now you may be kind of looking at this like, hey, you said you're going to charge 86% according to that plan, but according to the charger, you only charge 78. Yep, that is true. A better out planner said we'd get back at 17%, and I was okay with cutting that a little short. You know, if we got home closer to 10%, that's fine. You know, and you know, if we needed to charge again coming closer into the valley, you know, again, there's, you know, the if you know things got crazy for some reason, you know, we could stop back in Sedona on the way home. You know, as we get to the north end of the valley, you know, we'd be closer to, you know, 30 something percent, you know, as we reached like that northern Anthem area in Phoenix. So again, if we needed to, we could stop and charge there. You know, kind of going back to it, you know, as the charging networks grow and as more charge stations get built out over the years, you know, there's going to be less need for route planning and less questions on everything, you know, because you're just going to assume, kind of like we have gas stations now, I'll just pull off and charge somewhere. But coming back into the valley, that's already my mentality because there are so many charge stations around the Phoenix metro area. You know, if you go back to Plugshare and you know you take a look at you know the charge stations around the valley, you'll find that there's tons around the Phoenix metro area. You know, look at your city or your state, and you may find a lot. Now there are some states that are, you know, kind of considered charging deserts, like North Dakota, Iowa, Wyoming, Montana. You know, there are not a ton of public fast chargers in those states, but there's also not a lot of EVs in those states. Um, but you will find them. You know, if you go into Plugshare, you'll find them. There's plenty of them. Now, you know, like I had said earlier in the video, there's around like 75,000 charge stations out there, and now that's just level 3, or you know, people call it level 3, but you know they're DC fast charging stations. But there's close to 150,000 level 1 and level 2 charge stations. Now, I mean, level 1 is, you know, just your ordinary, you know, 120 outlet, but you know there are places out there that have designated that say, you know, hey, you can plug in a charger to this outlet if you want to charge your EV. You know, this is typically going to be around like hotels or restaurants, campgrounds, places like that. Level 2 chargers, you know, those are, you know, slightly faster. You'll find those allow around a lot of like retail stores, especially like hotels. A lot of new charge stations in hotels. I say charge stations, but like charge stalls. You know, a lot of hotels are adding level 2 charging in their parking lots. You know, some of them want you to pay like a flat rate. Some of them charge you like a small amount of money. You know, maybe it's based off their, you know, their pricing per kilowatt hour from their power company. But you know, some charge for it, some don't. Um, you know, it's kind of a feature that's advertised. Um, you know, and you know, like a level 2 charge station, you might get, you know, somewhere between 10 to, you know, 30 miles per hour, you know, that you're charging. So like if you're charging overnight at a hotel like that, that's perfect. But again, like if you look at Plugshare, you can filter charge stations, and you can find, you know, all of those slower charge stations. You can find all of the DC fast chargers out there. Um, you know, it's one of those things. Like I kind of mentally went through this, last year when I bought the Optiq. I occasionally kind of looked, to see what, the EV, environment was, and how things were, building out for EVs and stuff. And it's really amazing to see how it has grown, especially just in the last few years. It's really exploded a lot more. Um, but it's one of those things. Right now, yeah, we still need to kind of plan our routes, but I mean, at the rate things are going, at the rate these stations are building out, uh, I mean, I don't know, probably in the next 5-10 years, we probably won't have to worry so much about route planning. Again, if you go through some of those charge deserts, you might still want to plug something into the nav or a better route planner ahead of time, and just kind of see what it looks like. But I mean, even in like North Dakota and Montana and stuff, I expect there to be more charge stations popping up. Um, I believe Ayana's plan for building out stations is to have a like a fast charger within like every 50 miles or 75 miles down a highway, which I mean that really covers pretty much every EV, but that also means that you can start from about anywhere, and that gives you so many more options and so many possibilities for charging along the way. Um, and kind of going back to the optimal charge curve for vehicles, like if you happen to drive a Tesla or even look at the route planning in a Tesla, um, Teslas uh, optimize specifically for their charge curve, and they like hyper optimize. Um, so if you take a road trip in a Tesla, and again, Tesla's got several thousand charge stations out there on their own. I mean, they've been, building them out for 12 years at least. Uh, I guess probably closer to 14, 15 years at this point. But yeah, so I mean, if you plug in like if you go to like Tesla and you plan a route with like a Tesla or a better route planner or something like that, you'll find that like the Teslas want to stop and charge, and they might charge for like literally like a 10-minute charge, because they have a high peak speed at the beginning when they're at a lower state of charge, and they do have a charge curve that dives down a little bit more, um, you know, a little more quicker than like the Optiq that I showed towards the beginning of the video. Um, but that means they get a lot more power fast. So they might charge for, like 10 minutes or 12 minutes and be ready to go. So they might charge 3 or 4 times, between like Phoenix and California, for example. I mean, I've not planned this myself, but I know how their planning works. So they might have you stop 3 or 4 times between like Phoenix and like Long Beach in California. But if you're driving an Optiq, well, that's maybe a 2 or 3 stop, kind of charge situation. That Tesla's going to add, at least one, maybe 2 or 3 even more stops, because again, Tesla's looking at it from that optimum charge curve. Well, you only need 10% or 20% or 30% added to the car to reach this next charge station. And I guess that's kind of the way to look at it is, when you're looking at those optimized charge stops along the charge curve, it's not that you're charging to reach your final destination. It's that you're charging to reach your next optimal charge stop. And kind of going back to it, those Teslas, they hyper optimize to that. So again, you have more charge stops, that are shorter. But it's that's how they work it. Other EVs are a little bit different. There's a lot of new EVs that are coming out that charge so much faster, and it's kind of sucks that we don't have access to it here, at least not yet. But a lot of these Chinese EV companies, uh, especially like BYD has these blade batteries that they call them. And they're going to start using those and a lot more of their EVs, even their more affordable EVs. And those things can charge like 10% to 80% in like 5 or 10 minutes. It's ridiculously fast. BMW's got a new one coming out that we'll get here. Volvo's got one coming out we'll have here pretty soon that, they charge at like 400 or 500 kilowatts. It's crazy. The Rivian R2 just came out. And if you can find charge stations like Iona or Mercedes that will output 600 amps, those new Rivian R2s will charge at like something like 400 kilowatts. I don't know. It's crazy. They are fast. All right, car nerds, we made it back from Flagstaff with 29% battery left, and it's a little hard to tell in the paint, but we did we saw a bunch of dirt, some mud. We were all over the place. These tires are cooked, man. They are so dirty. They're gonna need a detail all on their own. And you know what the best thing is about EV life? You come home and you can plug in all on your own. Or it's cheap. There we go. All right, well, this charging gets started. I'll go inside and we'll wrap up this video about EV route planning. So to wrap up this video, just kind of coming back to the general theme, if you take, a few minutes, maybe even 15 minutes to plan a route, you can see what it looks like to drive an EV somewhere. You can see where you'll charge, how long you'll charge, and you can even compare that through like Google Maps, and you can see, how much that charging is going to impact your drive. Sure, with the gas car, as people say, they can stop for 5 minutes and, gas up and be on their way. But they also don't take into consideration that they may want to stretch their legs. They may want to take a break for a few minutes. They may need to use a restroom. They may want to get some food. There's so many things that happen, but, so many people are just stuck in that, hey, it only takes me 5 minutes, to gas up and go. And the thing is with EV road trips, taking that 15-minute break when you go to charge, I mean, like, I guess it's not really a break because, I mean, by the time you go into the gas station, use the facilities and grab a drink, I mean, you're looking at 10-15 minutes anyways. I mean, maybe even just 5-10 minutes to get in and out, but just to add that extra 5 minutes break outside the car, like, I mean, that's, I don't know, to me that's kind of a big deal. Stretch your legs a little bit. I have found taking a few road trips this last year with this Optiq, just kind of getting out and stretching, you feel so much better when you reach your destination, compared to in a gas car when you just get in and drive and just want to go and get there as quick as possible. And to kind of come back, because I know somebody's going to ask, what did we do in Flagstaff? Well, what you're seeing right now is kind of dash cam footage of what we did in Flagstaff. We went and we drove around through national parks and did some mild off-roading. Some of these roads are graded and graveled and better maintained than others. But I mean, we went through, we had some fun, and kind of answers the question, can an EV off-road? Yep, because we did. And this is also how those wheels got so muddy. Well, thank you for joining me for another episode of Foaming Ions. If you have questions, feel free to leave a comment below, and I'll do my best to point you in the right direction. Go ahead and like and subscribe if you've made it so far. Come on back. We'll do this again. We'll have some more fun. Because let me tell you, after this off-road activity, we're going to need a good car wash. Thanks again for watching, and we'll catch you next time.